At 82, I've lived long enough to understand the weight of decisions and the permanence of their consequences. One choice, in particular, haunts me deeply: moving into a nursing home. At the time, it seemed like the logical, even responsible, choice. My family encouraged it, assuring me I'd have all the care and comfort I needed. I trusted them, but once I stepped through those doors, I realized the reality was nothing like the promise. The life I imagined, safe, supported, and peaceful, was replaced by a stark, unfamiliar existence that stripped away more than I ever anticipated. Many of you may be considering this option, whether for yourself or a loved one. Perhaps you believe it's the safest choice, or maybe you've been told it will simplify life. But before you take that step, I want to share 6 truths I wish someone had told me. Because the reality of life in a nursing home isn't just about convenience, it's a profound shift that alters everything. Once you're in, leaving isn't as simple as walking out the door. It's a decision that reshapes your identity, your relationships, and your sense of purpose. Stay with me until the end, because these lessons might surprise you. And if you know someone contemplating this path, what I share here could be the perspective they need before making a life-altering decision. Let's begin. Regret 1: losing my independence. The greatest shock of moving into a nursing home wasn't the cramped room, the rigid meal schedules, or even the sea of unfamiliar faces. It was the crushing realization that I had lost control over my own life. Before I moved in, my days were my own. I decided when to wake up, when to eat, and how to spend my time. I could take a walk whenever the mood struck, cook a meal that suited my cravings, or simply sit in my favorite chair with a book, wrapped in the quiet comfort of my own space. But inside the nursing home, I quickly learned that my time was no longer mine. Every aspect of life ran on a schedule that wasn't mine to set. Breakfast was served at a fixed hour, whether I was hungry or not. Lights were turned off at a designated time, regardless of whether I was ready to sleep. Want to step outside for a walk? You might need permission, and you'd likely have to wait for someone to assist you. Even the simplest decisions, what to eat, what to wear, began to feel like privileges rather than basic rights. I remember my first week there, waking up in a bed that didn't feel like mine. I sat up, stretched, and reached for the book I'd been reading at home. But as I glanced around the room, it hit me: this wasn't my home. My books, my favorite chair, the little comforts I'd spent years curating, they were gone. In their place were sterile walls, a bed I hadn't chosen, and a lingering sense of displacement. I was no longer in charge of my own life. The hardest part was realizing that once you surrender your independence, reclaiming it is nearly impossible. You adapt because you have to. You stop arguing when they tell you what's for dinner. You stop asking if you can take a walk whenever you want. You learn to fit into their system, but in the process, you begin to lose yourself. The small freedoms that once defined your days, the ability to make choices, to move at your own pace, to live on your own terms, are replaced by a life dictated by routines and rules. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself this: are you ready to give up the little freedoms that make life yours? Because once they're gone, you'll miss them more than you ever thought possible. Independence isn't just about doing things for yourself, it's about owning your time, your choices, and your sense of self. And once it's gone, it's not something you can easily reclaim. Life becomes a series of compromises, and with each one, a piece of who you are slips away. This is the truth no one tells you: moving into a nursing home isn't just a change of address. It's a surrender of autonomy, a trade-off that comes at a cost far greater than most realize. And once you've paid that price, there's no going back. Regret 2: the pain of being forgotten. One of the hardest truths about moving into a nursing home is the slow, aching realization that the world outside keeps moving without you. When I first arrived, my family assured me they would visit often. I believed them, and in the beginning, they did. My daughter came by once a week, my grandchildren visited on weekends, and for a little while, it felt like I still had a foothold in my old life. But as the months passed, the visits grew fewer and farther between. Phone calls replaced face-to-face conversations. My grandchildren, busy with school and work, became strangers who only appeared in framed photos on my nightstand. Holidays, once filled with laughter and togetherness, became the loneliest times of all. Promises to visit were made, but plans always seemed to fall through at the last minute. And there I was, sitting alone in the common room, watching other residents stare at the door, hoping today would be the day someone remembered them. It's not that my family stopped loving me. Life simply got in the way. When you're not part of someone's daily life, it's easy for them to assume you're fine, that you've adjusted, that you don't need them as much as you once did. But the truth is, the longer you're in a nursing home, the easier it is for people to forget just how much you still need them. Out of sight, out of mind, it's a saying that cuts deeper than I ever imagined. I remember one evening, sitting in my room, holding my phone, debating whether to call my son. I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to remind him that I was here, waiting for a visit that might never come. So I put the phone down, and in that moment, it hit me, this was my life now. Watching the days go by, hoping someone would remember to include me. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself this: are you prepared for the loneliness? Because no matter how much your family loves you, once you're out of their daily lives, it's easier than you think to become an afterthought. The connections that once felt unbreakable, the shared meals, the spontaneous conversations, the simple presence of being together, begin to fray. And what's left is a quiet ache, a longing for the life you once had. This is the reality no one warns you about. Moving into a nursing home isn't just a physical transition, it's an emotional one. It's a shift from being an active participant in your family's life to becoming a spectator, watching from the sidelines as the world moves on without you. The love may still be there, but the closeness, the daily reminders that you matter, fades. If you're still watching this and finding these insights valuable, take a moment to reflect. Comment the number 2 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to do so and turn on the notifications. Your support helps keep this conversation going. Now, let's move forward. Regret 3, losing my sense of purpose. When I moved into the nursing home, I thought I was simply changing where I lived. I didn't realize I was also changing why I lived. At home, I had responsibilities, routines, hobbies, and a reason to wake up every morning. Even the smallest things, watering my plants, brewing my own coffee, tidying up my space, gave me a sense of purpose. They were tiny acts of care that reminded me I mattered, that my presence made a difference in the world, however small. But in the nursing home, those daily rituals vanished. Meals were prepared for me, cleaning was handled by someone else, and the plants, they weren't mine to tend to anymore. At first, I told myself it would be nice to finally relax. No more chores, no more responsibilities, just rest. But after a few weeks, I realized something was missing. The days felt endless, stretching out with nothing to do but wait. I saw it in the other residents too. People who had once been vibrant and full of life now spent their days sitting silently, staring into space, waiting for time to pass. There was a man named George, 84 years old, who had been a carpenter his entire life. At home, he was always fixing things, building little projects in his garage. But here, there were no tools, no projects, nothing for him to create. I watched as he slowly withdrew, his once strong and skilled hands now idle in his lap. I feel useless, he told me one day, and I knew exactly what he meant. When you no longer have something to care for, something to work toward, life begins to lose its meaning. The mind slows down, the body follows, and soon you start to feel like just another resident in a place where time moves but nothing really changes. The days blur together, and the sense of purpose that once fueled you fades into the background. It's not just about having things to do, it's about having a reason to do them. At home, even the mundane tasks were meaningful because they were mine. They were proof that I was still capable, still contributing, still alive. But in the nursing home, everything is done for you, and in the process, you lose the sense of agency that makes life worth living. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself this: what gives your life meaning? Because once you move in, finding purpose isn't as simple as filling your time. It's about fighting to hold on to the things that make you feel alive. It's about resisting the pull of passivity and finding ways to reclaim your sense of self. This is the truth no one tells you: moving into a nursing home isn't just a change of scenery. It's a shift in identity. It's a place where the roles that once defined you, parent, caregiver, creator, are stripped away, leaving you to wonder who you are and why you're here. If you're still watching this and finding these insights valuable, take a moment to reflect. Comment the number 3 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to do so and turn on the notifications. Your support helps keep this conversation going. Now, let's move forward. Regret 4: declining health faster than expected. Before I moved into the nursing home, I was in relatively good health for my age. I wasn't running marathons, but I could still take care of myself, cook my own meals, take walks, and maintain a level of independence that made me feel capable and alive. I had little routines that kept me moving: grocery shopping, morning stretches, even just pacing around the house to keep my legs strong. But once I moved into the nursing home, everything changed. At first, it seemed like a relief. Meals were brought to me, and I no longer had to stand in the kitchen to cook. If I needed something, I could press a button, and someone would come to assist me. It felt like a luxury, a chance to finally relax. But what I didn't realize was that the less I did for myself, the weaker I became. I stopped moving as much, and before I knew it, my legs felt stiff, my muscles ached, and even getting up from a chair started to feel like a monumental task. The strength I had spent years maintaining was slipping away faster than I ever imagined. And it wasn't just me. I saw it happen to others too. People who had walked in on their own 2 feet were suddenly relying on walkers or wheelchairs. Those who had once been independent now needed help with tasks they had never struggled with before. The more assistance we received, the more we seemed to need it. It was as if the system designed to make life easier was quietly eroding our ability to care for ourselves. I remember my neighbor, Alice, an 81-year-old woman who had been lively and energetic when she first arrived. She used to take daily walks around the facility, insisting that she wasn't going to let a number, her age, slow her down. But after a few months, I noticed she wasn't walking as much. Then she started using a walker. Then a wheelchair. One day, she looked at me and said, "I don't know when it happened, but I feel like I've aged 10 years in just a few months." And that's exactly how it felt. When you stop using your body, you start losing it. In a nursing home, where everything is designed to make life effortless, it's easy to forget that movement isn't just about convenience, it's about survival. The less you do, the more your body deteriorates, and the harder it becomes to regain what you've lost. It's a vicious cycle, one that creeps up on you until you realize you're no longer the person you used to be. If I had known how quickly I would lose my strength, I would have fought harder to keep moving, to stay active, to push myself even when I didn't feel like it. But in a place where everything is done for you, motivation is hard to come by. The routines that once kept me strong were replaced by a life of passivity, and with each passing day, I felt myself slipping further away from the person I used to be. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself this: will you still have the motivation to keep your body strong when everything is set up to make life effortless? Because once you slow down, getting back up isn't as easy as you think. The physical decline that comes with inactivity is swift and unforgiving, and it's a reality that many of us don't fully grasp until it's too late. This is the truth no one tells you: moving into a nursing home isn't just a change of environment, it's a change in how you live. It's a place where the very systems designed to care for you can also contribute to your decline. And once you've lost your strength, your independence, your ability to move freely, it's not something you can easily reclaim. If you're still watching this and finding these insights valuable, take a moment to reflect. Comment the number 4 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to do so and turn on the notifications. Your support helps keep this conversation going, and it reminds us that these stories matter. Now, let's move forward. Because the next regret is one that touches on something deeply personal, something we all take for granted until it's gone. Regret 5, the loss of privacy and dignity. One of the things I didn't fully consider before moving into a nursing home was just how much of my privacy and dignity I would have to surrender. At home, I had my own space, a sanctuary where I could close the door, sit in silence, and live life on my own terms. But in a nursing home, privacy is a luxury you don't always get to keep. From the moment I arrived, I felt like I was constantly being watched. Staff members came in and out of my room at all hours, scheduled checks interrupted my day, and shared spaces meant I was rarely alone. Even the simplest acts, getting dressed, using the bathroom, or taking a shower, often required someone's assistance. I knew they were just doing their jobs, but it's not easy to accept help for things you've done independently your entire life. I remember my first week there, struggling with the idea that I had to ask for permission to do things I once did without a second thought. Want to take a shower? You might have to wait until someone is available to help. Need to use the restroom? Sometimes pressing the call button means waiting longer than you'd like. Even meal choices were limited. If you didn't like what was on the menu that day, too bad. It's a small thing, but it chips away at your sense of autonomy. Then there was the issue of roommates. Not everyone gets a private room, and sharing a space with someone you didn't choose can be incredibly challenging. I was fortunate to have a kind roommate, but I heard stories from others who weren't so lucky. Some had roommates who were loud, messy, or even had cognitive issues that made sleep nearly impossible. No matter how much you try to make your room feel like home, it's never truly yours. The walls are sterile, the furniture is impersonal, and the constant presence of others, whether staff or residents, makes it hard to feel like you have a space of your own. Dignity is a fragile thing, and I didn't realize how much of mine I'd have to give up until I was already there. When people knock but don't always wait for an answer before entering. When you're spoken to like a patient instead of a person. When your daily routines are dictated by a schedule you didn't create, it changes you. You start to feel less like yourself and more like just another name on a list. The hardest part is the loss of control. At home, I decided when to eat, when to sleep, and how to spend my time. But in the nursing home, those choices were taken away. I felt like I was living on someone else's terms, and with each passing day, I lost a little more of myself. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself this: are you prepared to give up the privacy and control you've had your entire life? Because once it's gone, it's hard to get back. The loss of dignity is subtle but profound. It's in the way you're treated, the way you're spoken to, and the way you're stripped of the small freedoms that make life yours. This is the truth no one tells you: moving into a nursing home isn't just a change of address, it's a surrender of your most basic rights. It's a place where the systems designed to care for you can also strip away your sense of self. And once that's gone, it's not something you can easily reclaim. If you're still watching this and finding these insights valuable, take a moment to reflect. Comment the number 5 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to do so and turn on the notifications. Your support helps keep this conversation going, and it reminds us that these stories matter. Now, let's move forward. Because the next regret is one that touches on something deeply personal, something we all take for granted until it's gone. Regret 6, realizing it's harder to leave than you think. When I first moved into the nursing home, I told myself it was temporary. I thought I'd give it a try, see how things went, and if I didn't like it, I could always leave. It seemed like a reasonable plan, a low-risk experiment. But what I didn't realize was just how difficult it would be to leave once I was in. The decision to move in felt reversible, but the reality was anything but. At first, it seemed simple enough. If I didn't like it, I'd just go back home. But home wasn't the same anymore. My house sat empty, and maintaining it from a distance became increasingly complicated. My children had already started making changes, selling furniture I no longer needed, clearing out rooms, even considering renting the place out. When I brought up the idea of returning, they hesitated. "Are you sure you can manage on your own?" they asked. "Wouldn't it be safer to stay? We just want what's best for you." Their concerns were well-meaning, but they also felt like barriers I couldn't overcome. Then there was the issue of my physical decline. After months of living in a place where I didn't have to cook, clean, or even walk very far, I wasn't as strong as I used to be. The independence I once took for granted had slipped away, and the idea of returning to a life of self-sufficiency felt daunting. I wasn't as confident in my ability to live alone, and that fear kept me stuck. I met others who had the same experience. They, too, had thought the nursing home would be a temporary solution, only to realize that leaving wasn't as easy as they'd imagined. The longer you stay, the harder it becomes to adjust to life outside. For some, the option to leave disappeared entirely. Their homes were sold, their savings drained by the cost of care, and their independence eroded to the point of no return. That's the part no one tells you. Moving into a nursing home feels like a decision you can reverse, but for most people, it isn't. The nursing home slowly becomes your entire world, and before you know it, the life you once knew starts to feel like a distant memory. The routines, the relationships, the sense of control, they all fade away, replaced by a new reality that's hard to escape. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself this: are you prepared for the possibility that once you go in, leaving might not be as simple as you think? Because once you settle in, the barriers to leaving, whether financial, physical, or emotional, can be harder to overcome than you expect. The system is designed to keep you there, and the longer you stay, the more it becomes your only option. This is the truth no one warns you about. Moving into a nursing home isn't just a change of address, it's a shift in the trajectory of your life. It's a decision that can close doors you didn't even realize were open. And once those doors are shut, reopening them is anything but easy. If you're still watching this and finding these insights valuable, take a moment to reflect. Comment the number 6 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to do so and turn on the notifications. Your support helps keep this conversation going, and it reminds us that these stories matter. Now, let's move forward. Because the next regret is one that touches on something deeply personal, something we all take for granted until it's gone. Final thoughts. Looking back, I don't regret growing older, but I do regret believing that a nursing home was my only option. I walked in expecting comfort, safety, and a better quality of life. Instead, I found a world that slowly stripped away my independence, my privacy, my sense of purpose, and even my identity. It wasn't just a change of address, it was a transformation of who I was and how I lived. Does that mean nursing homes are all bad? Not necessarily. For some, they provide essential care that can't be replicated at home. But before you make that decision, think carefully about what you're giving up. Because once you move in, life will never be the same. The routines, the freedoms, the little choices that make life yours, they're replaced by a system that, while well-intentioned, can feel more like a cage than a home. If I could do it over, I would have fought harder to stay in my own home. I would have explored more options for in-home care, sought out community resources, and found ways to maintain my independence for as long as possible. I would have asked myself, is this truly what's best for me, or is it just what seems easiest right now? Because the life you have today, your routines, your independence, your choices, is worth holding onto for as long as you can. If you're facing this decision, I hope you take the time to ask yourself the same questions. Are you moving into a nursing home because it's the best option, or because it's the most convenient? Are you prepared to give up the life you know for one that may not feel like yours? These are hard questions, but they're worth asking. Because once you make the move, there's no going back. Thank you for joining me today. Your presence here means the world to me, and I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and share one thing you've learned from this video and how you plan to apply it to your life. Your thoughts matter, and reading your comments gives me the motivation and encouragement to keep sharing these stories. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. Your support helps us continue creating content that informs, inspires, and empowers. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, take care of yourself, and remember, your life, your choices, and your independence are worth fighting for.